मेरे यूट्यूब चैनल में। मैन हैज़ और हम बात करने वाले चैप्टर थे जो है टॉक अबाउट द माइंड। बैठ जाए। मैन हैज़ बट वन माइंड बट ही हैज़ मैनी मेंटल फैसिलिटीज़, ईच फैकल्टी being capable of functioning along two different lines of mental effort. There are no distinct dividing lines separating the two several functions of a faculty, but they said into each other as do the colors of the spectrum. An active effort of any faculty of the mind is the result of a direct impulse imparted at the time of the effort. A passive effort of any faculty of the mind is the result of either a preceding active effort of the same mind, an active effort of another along the lines of suggestion, thought vibrations from the mind of another, thought impulses from an ancestor transmitted by the laws of heredity, including impulses transmitted from generation to generation from the time of the original vibratory impulse imparted by the primal cause, which impulses gradually unfold and unfold and unsealed when the proper state evolutionary development is reached. The active effort is newborn, fresh from the mint, while the passive effort is of less recent creation, and in fact is often the result of vibratory impulses imparted in ages long past. The active effort makes its own way, brushing aside the impeding vines and kicking from its path the obstructing stones. The passive effort travels along the beaten path. A thought impulse or motion impulse originally caused by an active effort of a faculty may become, by continued repetition or habit, strictly automatically the impulse given it by the repeated active effort, developing a strong momentum which carries it on along passive lines until stopped by another active effort or its direction changed by the same cause. On the other hand, thought impulses or motion impulses continued along passive lines may be terminated or corrected by an active effort. The active function creates changes or destroys. The active function creates changes or destroys. The passive function carries on the work given it by the active function and obeys orders and suggestions. The active function produces the thought habit or motion habit and imparts to it the vibrations which carry it on along the passive lines. Thereafter, the active function also has the power to send forth vibrations which neutralize the momentum of the thought habit or motion habit. It also is able to launch a new thought habit or motion habit with stronger vibrations which overcomes and observes the first thought or motion and substitutes the new one. All thought impulses or motion impulses, once started or their errands, continue to vibrate along passive lines until corrected or terminated by subsequent impulses imparted by the active function or other controlling power. The continuance of the original impulse adds momentum, adds force to it, and renders its correction or termination more difficult. This implies that which is called the force of habit. I think that this will be readily understood by those who have the struggle to overcome a habit which had been easily acquired. The law implies to good habits as well as bad. The moral is obvious. Several of the faculties of the mind often combine to produce a single manifestation. A task to be performed may call for the combined exercise of several faculties, some of which may manifest by active effort or some others by passive effort. The meeting of new conditions, new problems calls for the exercise of active effort, whilst a familiar problem or task can be easily handled by the passive effort without the assistance of his more enterprising brother. There is in there is there is in nature or instinctive a tendency of living organism to perform certain actions. The tendency of an organized body to seek that which satisfies the wants of its organism. This tendency is sometimes called appetency. It is really a passive mental impulse originating with the impetus imparted by the primal cause and transmitted along the lines of evolutionary development, gaining strength and power as it progresses. The impulse of the primal cause is assisted by the powerful upward attraction exerted by the absolute in plant life. This tendency is plainly discerni- discernible, ranging from the laser exhibitions in the lower types of the greater in the higher types. Okay, it is that it is that which is generally spoken of as the life force in plants. It is, however, a manifestation of rudimentary mentation functioning along the lines of passive effort. In some of the higher forms of the plant life, there appears a faint color of independent life action, a faint indication of choice of violation. Writers on plant life relate many remarkable instances of this phenomenon. It is undoubtedly an exhibition of rudimentary active mentation. In the lower animal kingdom, a very high degree of passive mental effort is found. Okay, and varying in degree in the several families and species, a considerable amount of active mental mentation is apparent. The lower animal undoubtedly possesses reason only in a lesser degree than man, and in fact the display of volition mentation exhibited by an intelligent animal is often nearly as high as that shown by the lower types of man or by a young child. As a child before birth shows in its body the stages of the physical evolution of man, so does a child before and after birth until maturity manifests the stages of the mental evolution of man. Man, the highest type of life yet produced, at least upon this planet, shows the highest form of passive meditation and also a much higher development active meditation than is seen in the lower animals, and yet the degrees of the power vary widely among the different races of men. Even among men of our race, the different degrees of active mentation are plainly noticeable. These degrees not depending by any means upon the amount of culture, social position, or educational advantages possessed by the individual. Mental culture and mental development are two very different things. You have but to look around you to see the different stages of the development of active mentation in men. Okay, the reasoning of many men is scarcely more than a passive mentation. Okay, exhibiting but little of the qualities of violation thought. They prefer to let other men think of them. Active mentation tires them, and they find the instinctive automatic. Okay, passive mental process much easier. Their minds work along the lines of least resistance. They are built a little more than the human sheep. Among the lower animals and the lower types of man, active mentation is largely confined to the grosser facilities. The more material plane, the higher mental facilities working along the instinctive, automatic lines of the passive function. As the lower forms of the life progressed in the evolutionary scale, they developed new faculties which were latent within them. These faculties always manifested in the form of rudimentary in the form of rudimentary passive functioning, and afterwards worked up through higher passive forms until the active functions were brought into play. The evolutionary process still continues, the invariable tendency being toward the goal of highly developed active mentation. This evolutionary progress is caused by the vibratory impulse imparted by the primal cause, added by the uplifting attraction of the absolute. This law of evolution is still in progress, and man is beginning to develop new powers of mind, which, of course, are first manifesting themselves along the lines of passive effort. Some men have developed these new faculties to a considerable degree, and it is possible that before long men will be able to exercise them along the line of their active functions. In fact, this power has already been attained by a few. This is the secret of the original Oriental occultists, and some of their Occidental brethren. The amenability of the mind to the will can be increased by properly directed practice, that which we are in the habit of referring to as the strengthening of the will is in reality of training of the mind to recognize and observe the power within. The will is strong. The will is strong enough. Is it does not need strengthening, but the mind needs to be trained to receive and act upon the suggestions of the will. The will is to outward manifestation of the I am. The will current is flowing in full strength along the spiritual wires, but you must learn how to raise the trolley pole to touch it before the mental car will move. Okay, this is a somewhat different idea from that which you have been in the habit of receiving from writers on the subject of willpower, but it is correct, as you will demonstrate to you on your own satisfaction if you will follow up the subject by experiments along the proper lines. The attraction of the absolute is drawing man upward, and the vibratory force of the primal impulse has not yet exhausted itself. The time of evolutionary development has come when man can help himself. The man who understands the law can accomplish wonders by means of the development of the power of the mind, whilst the man who turns his back upon the truth will suffer from his lack of knowledge of the law. He who understands the law of his mental being develops his latent powers and uses them intelligently. He does not despise his passive mental functions, but makes good use of them. Also charges them with the duties for which they are best fitted, and is able to obtain wonderful results from their work, having mastered them and trained them to do the bidding to the higher self. When they fail to do their work properly, he regulates them, and his knowledge prevents him from meddling with them unintelligently, and thereby doing himself harm. He develops the faculties and powers latent within him, and learns how to manifest them along the line of active mentation as well as passive. He knows that the real man within him is the master, to whom both active and passive functions are but tools. He has banished fear and enjoys freedom. He has found himself. He has learned the secret of the I am. Okay. Mind building. Chapter 4. Man can build up his mind and make it what he wills. In fact, we are mind building every hour of our lives, either consciously or unconsciously. The majority of us are doing the work unconsciously, but those who have seen a little below the surface of things have taken the master in things, taken the matter in hand, and have become conscious creators of their own mentality. They are no longer subject to the suggestions and influences of the others, but have become masters of themselves. They assert the I and compel obedience from the subordinate mental faculties. The I is the sovereign of the mind, and what we call will is the instrument of the I. Of course, there is something back of this, and I, the universal will, is higher than the will of the individual, but the latter is in much closer touch with the universal will than is generally supposed, and when one conquers the lower self and asserts the I, he he becomes in close touch with the universal will and partakes largely of its wonderful power. The moment one asserts the I and finds himself, he establishes a close connection between the individual will, the universal will. But before he is able to avail himself of the mighty power at his command, he must first effect the mastery of the lower self. Think of the absurdity of man claiming to manifest powers when he is the slave of the lower parts of his mental being, which should be subordinate. Think of a man being the slave of his moods, passions, animal appetites, and lower faculties, and at the same time trying to claim the benefits of the will. Now I am not preaching asceticism, which seems to me to be a confessional of weakness. I am speaking of self mastery, of assertion of the I over the subordinate parts of oneself. In the higher view of the subject, this I is the only real self, and the rest is the non self. But our space does not permit the discussion of this point, and we will use the word self as meaning the entire man. Before man can assert the I in its full strength, he must obtain the complete mastery of the subordinate parts of the self. All things are good when we learn to master them, but no thing is good when it masters it. all things are good when we learn to master them, but no thing is good when it masters us. Just so long, just so long, just so long as we allow the lower portions of the self to give up orders, we are slaves. It is only when the I mounts his throne and lifts the scripture, the order is established, and things assume their proper relation to each other. We are finding no fault with we are finding no fault with those who are swayed by their lower selves. They are in lower grade of evolution and will work up in time. But we are calling the attention of those who are ready to the fact that the sovereign must assert he will, and that the subject must obey. Orders must be given. Orders must be given and carried out. Rebellion must be put down, and the rightful authority insisted upon. And the time to do is now. And the time to do it is now. You have been allowing your rebellious subjects to keep the king from his throne. You have been allowing the mental kingdom to be misgoverned by irresponsible faculties. You have been the slaves of appetite, unworthy thoughts, passion, and negativeness. The will has been set aside. The law desire has usurped the throne. It is time to re-establish order in the mental kingdom. You are able to assert the mastery over any emotion, appetite, passion, or class of thoughts by the assertion of the will. You can order fear to go to the rear, jealousy or leave your presence, hate to depart from your side, anger to hide itself, worry to siege, troubling you, unconscious, uncontrolled appetite and passion to bow in some submission, and to become humble slaves instead of masters, all by the assertion of the I. You may surround yourself with the glorious company of courage, love, and self-control by the same means. You may put down the rebellion and secure peace and order in your mental kingdom if you will but utter the mandate and insist upon its execution. But you before you march forth to empire, you must establish the proper internal conditions, must show your ability to govern your own kingdom. The first battle is the conquest of the lesser self by the real self. Affirmation: I am asserting the mastery of my real self. Repeat these words earnestly and positively during the day at least once an hour, and particularly when you are confronted with conditions which tempt you to act on the lines of the lesser self instead of following the course dictated by the real self. In the moment of doubt and hesitation, say these words earnestly, and your way will be made clear to you. Repeat them several times after you retire and settle yourself to sleep. But be sure to back up the words with the thoughts inspiring them, and do not merely repeat them parrot-like. From the mental image of the real self asserting its mastery over the lower planes of your mind, see the king on his throne. You will become conscious of an influx of new thought, and the things which have seemed hard for you will suddenly become much easier. You will feel that you have yourself well in hand, and that you are the master and not the slave. The thought you are holding will manifest itself in action, and you will steadily grow to become that which you have in mind. fix the mind firmly on the higher self and draw inspiration from it. When you feel led to yield to the promotings of the lower part of your nature, when you are tempted to burst into anger, assert the I and your voice will drop. Anger is unworthy of the developed self. When you feel vexed and cross, remember what you are and rise above your feeling. When you feel fearful, remember the real self fears nothing and assert courage. When you feel jealousy inciting, think of your higher nature and laugh, and so on, asserting the real self and no allowing the things on the lower plane of mentality to disturb you. They are unworthy of you and must be taught to keep their places. Do not allow these things to master you. They should be your subjects, not your masters. You must get away from this plane, and the only way to do so is to cut loose from these planes phases of thought which have been running things to suit themselves. You may have troubled at the start, but keep at it, and you will have that satisfaction which comes only from conquering the lower parts of our nature. You have been a slave long enough. Now is the time to free yourself. If you will follow these exercises faithfully, you will be a different being by the end of the year and will look back with a pitying smile to your former condition. But it takes work. This is not child's play, but a task for earnest men and earnest men. The secret of the will. Chapter 5. While psychologists may differ in their theories regarding the nature of the will, none deny its existence nor question its power. All persons recognize the power of the strong will. All see how it may be used to overcome the greatest obstacles, but few realize that the will may be developed and strengthened by intelligent practice. They feel that they could accomplish wonders if they had a strong will, but instead of attempting to develop it, they content themselves with vain regrets. They sigh but do nothing. Those who have the subject closely investigated subject closely known that willpower with all its latent possibilities and mighty powers may be developed, disciplined, controlled, and directed just as many be any other of nature's forces. It does not matter what the theory you may entertain about the nature of the will. You will obtain the results if you practice intelligently. Personally, I have I have a somewhat odd theory about the will. I believe that every man has potentially a strong will, and that all he has to do is to train his mind to make use of it. I think that in the higher regions of the mind of every man is a great store of willpower awaiting his use. The will current is running along the sight wires, and all is that it is necessary to do is to raise the mental trolley pole and bring down the power for your use, and the supply is unlimited for your little storage battery is connected with the great power house of universal willpower, and the power is inexhaustible. Your will does not need training, but your mind does. The mind is the instrument, and the supply of willpower is proportionate to the fitness of the instrument through which it manifests. but you need not accept this theory if you don't like it. This lesson will fit your theory as well as mine. He who has developed his mind so that it will allow the willpower to manifest through it has opened up wonderful possibilities for himself. Not only has he found a great power as his command, but he is able to bring into play and use faculties, talents, and availabilities of whose existence whose existence he has not dreamed. This secret of the will is the magic keynote opens all doors. The late Donald G. Mitchell once wrote, resolve is resolve is what makes a man manifest. Okay, resolve is what resolve is what makes a man makes a man manifest. Not punny resolve, not money resolve, but crude determination, not errant purpose, but that is strong and indefatigable will which treats down difficulties and danger as a boy treats down the having frost lands of winter, which kindles his eye and brain with a proud pulse beat towards the unattainable will makes men giants. Many of us feel that if we would but exert our will, we might accomplish wonders, but somehow we do not seem to want to take the trouble. At any rate, we do not get the actual willing point. We put it off from time to time and talk vaguely of some day, but that some day never comes. We instinctively feel the power of the will, but we haven't enough energy to exercise it, and so drift along with the tide unless perhaps some friendly difficulties arises, some helpful obstacle appears in our path, or some kindly pain stirs us into action. In either of which cases we are compelled to assert our will and thus begin to accomplish something. Okay, the trouble with us is the trouble with us is that we do not want to do the thing enough to make us exert our will power. We do not want to hard enough. We are mentally lazy and of weak desire. If you do not like the word desire, substitute for it the word aspiration. Some people call the lower impulses desire and the higher aspiration. It is all the matter of words. Take your choice. That is the trouble. Let a man be in danger of losing his life. Let a woman be in danger of losing a great love, and you will witness a startling exhibition of willpower from an unexpected source. Let a woman's child be threatened with danger, and she will manifest a degree of courage and will that sweeps all before it. And yet the same women will quail before a domineering husband, and will lack the will to perform a simple task. A boy will do all sorts of work if he put considers it play, and yet he can scarcely force himself to cut a little firewood. Strong will follows strong desire. If you really want to do a thing very much, you can usually develop the willpower to accomplish it. The trouble is that you have not really wanted to do these things, and yet you blame your will. You say that you do not want to do it, but if you stop to think, you will see that you really want to do something else more than the thing in question. You are not willing to pay the price of attainment. Stop a moment and analyze this statement and apply it to your own case. You are mentally lazy. That is the trouble. Don't talk to me about your having enough will. You have a great storehouse of will awaiting your use, but you are too lazy to use it now. If you are really in earnest about this matter, get to work and first find out what you really want to do, then start to work and do it. Never mind about the willpower, you will find a full supply of that whenever you need it. The thing to do is to get the point to get to the point where you will resolve to will. That is the real test, the resolving thing of these things a little and make up your mind whether or not you really want to be a winner. Sufficiently hard to get to work. Many excellent essays and books have been written on this subject, all of which agrees regarding the greatness of willpower. The most enthusiastic terms being used, but few have anything to say about how this power may be acquired by those who have it not, or who possesses it in but a limited degree. Some have given exercises designed to strengthen the will, which exercises really strengthen the mind so that it is able to draw upon its store of power. But they have generally overlooked the fact that in autosuggestion is to be found the secret of the development of the mind, so that it may become the efficient instrument of the will. Autosuggestion: I am using my willpower. Say these words several times, earnestly and positively, immediately after finishing this article. Then repeat them frequently during the day, at least once an hour, and particularly when you meet something that calls for the exercise of will power. Also repeat them several times after you retire and settle yourself for sleep. Now, there's nothing in these words unless you back them up with the thought. In fact, the thought is the whole thing, and the words only pegs upon which to hang the thought. So think of what you are saying and mean what you say. You must use faith at the start and use the words with a confident expectation of the result. Hold the steady thought that you are drawing on your storehouse of willpower, and before long you will find that thought is taking from inaction in action, and that your willpower is manifesting itself. You will feel an influx of strength with each repetition of the words. You will find yourself overcoming difficulties and bad habits, and will be surprised at how things are being smoothed out for you. Perform at least one desirable task each day during the month. If there is any especially disagreeable task within you would like to shirk, that is the one for you to perform. This is not given you in order to make you self sacrificing or meek, or anything of that sort. It is given you to exercise your will. Anyone can do a pleasant thing cheerfully, but it takes will to do the unpleasant thing cheerfully, and that is how you must do the work. It will prove a most valuable discipline to you. Try it for a month and you will see where it comes in. If you shirk this exercise, you had better stop right here and acknowledge that you do not want willpower and are content to stay where you are and remain a weakling. Chapter 6: How to become immune to injurious thought attraction. The first thing is to do is to bring the first thing is to do is to bring to cut off fear and worry. Fear thought is the cause of much unhappiness and many failures. You have been told this thing over and over again, but it will bear repeating. Fear is a habit of mind which has been fastened upon us by negative race thought, but from which we may we may we may free ourselves by individual effort and perseverance. Strong expectancy is a powerful magnet. He of the he of the strong confident desire attracts to him the things best calculated to add him persons, things, circumstances, surroundings, if he desires them hopefully, trustfully, confidently, calmly, and equally true. He who fears a thing generally manages to start into operation forces which will cause the thing he feared to come upon him. Don't you see, the man who fears really expects the feared thing, and in the eyes of the law is it is and in the eyes of the law it is the same as if he really had wished for or desired it. The law is operative in both cases. The principle is the same. The best way to overcome the habit of fear is to assume the mental attitude of courage, just as the just as the best way just as the best way to get rid of darkness is to let in the light. It is a waste of time to fight a negative thought habit by recognizing its force and trying to deny it out of existence by mighty efforts. The best, surest, easiest, and quickest method is to assume an existence of the positive thought desired in its place, and by constantly dwelling upon the positive thought, manifest it into objective reality. Therefore, instead of repeating, "I am not afraid," say boldly, "I am full of courage. I am courageous." You must assert, "There is nothing to fear," which, although in the nature of a denial, simply denies the reality of the object causing fear rather than admitting the fear itself and then denying it. To overcome fear, one should hold firmly to the mental attitude of courage. He should think courage, say courage, act courage. He should keep the mental picture of courage before him all the time until it becomes his normal mental attitude. Hold the ideal firmly before you and you will gradually grow to its attainment. The ideal will become manifested. Let the